Yeah, if you want to know, to understand what is at Munyonyo, you really have to understand what NAM is all about, why it came up. Eh? NAM comes up in 1947 after Second World War, when there are two powers in the world, two emerging powers, Russia, America. And because there are these two competing powers and they are rivaling, countries tended to align themselves either to the Americans because of the ideology of capitalism, or to Russia on the side of socialism, communism, things like that. Now, those two blocks, because of the rivalry, is why now NAM comes up. To say for us, we are not aligned. We are not going to be on the side of America. We are not going to be on the side of Russia. We are going to be neutral. We don't want to be dragged in your fights. That is how NAM comes up, because they want to be independent and neutral. So then you go back now to it comes up around 1955, and at that time there are only three countries which are pushing it: India with Nehru, Yugoslavia with Tito, and Egypt, Nasser. So they're the ones who pushed this thing to begin this movement of saying, we don't want to be pushed in your fights, America and Russia. It was then formalized in 1961. That was because the other three, when they did it, was just informal. But in 61 is now when it is formalized as a movement. And at that time, what they were concentrating on was now the consequences. What they were looking at, say, okay, we are independent, but we are going to concentrate on the consequences of colonialism. We are going to concentrate on development. We are going to concentrate on sovereignty and territorial. Formed this body in 1961. Sovereignty and territorial integrity, effects of colonialism, and development. Those were the three main issues. And really those issues is what went through the 70s, the 80s. But as you know, 1991, one of the superpowers ceased to be there, as the Soviet Union. Its power greatly lessened. It was no longer a big bloc. So if we were formed as a body, not to take the side of any of the fighting powers, if one power has collapsed, what is the relevance of us continuing? Why? Because you didn't want to align with Russia, or you didn't want to align with America. It is no longer there. Russia has collapsed. It has become also a small country. America is now the big one. Why do you want to say you are still non-aligned between from who and who? That's the question you should ask yourself. If you want to really to understand the relevance of NAM, the reason it was formed as non-aligned ceased to exist. Then when the Cold War ended, the global order, there was now a new global order, different from what had been there before. But still, there are certain things, yes, they can discuss. There are certain things they can discuss. For example, now it is a unipolar world with America. For the last decade or so, America has been rising, but at the same time, China has also been rising. So you may want to ask yourself, should non-aligned not continue this time, but not Russia, but between America and China? So when you see now China is also here, you ask yourself, why? What is this? Because China is rising, and very soon it is going to surpass America. So if you want to keep yourselves non-aligned, you should actually not be inviting China. If you wanted the principles of non-alignment, when you were saying rivalry, we don't want this to be part of your rivalry. The rivalry is now going to be between America and China. But you do still need it to discuss now things like, in the meantime, America has been doing things as the one big person around. I'm the only one around. So it does foolish things, and there is nobody to cross-check it, to check it. You look at what is happening in Palestine. America is arming Israel. Israel is committing genocide. Things go to UN, they go to the Security Council, but because America is now the only superpower around flexing muscles, it is getting away with all these kind of things. So it can still be relevant in discussing some of these issues in the context that there is only one superpower, but at the same time being mindful of the fact that China is rising, and it may still be required in order to stay away from the rivalry of the two. That is how I say it. But also, the other thing is that most of these countries are really south to south. Most of them in NAM are south to south. They have a similar history. The history they have is of colonialism. They have the same problems of underdevelopment. So this is the relevance here could be that this is a body. This is a body which can address some of the issues because they share a lot in common. They share a lot in common. So it can be part of cooperate. They can cooperate for purposes of development. So that can be one of things which can make it relevant. Then it can also facilitate the discussion between the South and the North on economic issues. We in the South and the North, but also it can also deal, apart from facilitating that discussion with developed countries on economic issues, getting better deals. It can also deal with emerging issues of excessive debt, human rights, good governance, environmental issues, social development. All these are matters which are affecting them as states. So this can be a forum where they can use this to discuss these issues which are affecting them as states. Everybody requires a lot of reform first. If those resolutions, declarations, policies they come up with are to make any sense, the body requires institutional and organizational reform. I doubt that it even has a secretariat. I doubt that it even has a secretariat, because the way international organizations work is, yes, you have this summit, and then this summit reaches these conclusions, these resolutions. There is a body which then puts them in place and ensures that they are achieved. And then after that, there is a supervisor. You're not going to meet every day. The summit meets how many times? After how long? Is it 2 years or 3 years? I don't know. But between that time, between the meeting, what is there to push these policies you are talking about? Nothing. I don't think they even have a secretariat. You compare it with, for example, with the East African community. You have the summit. You have the Council of Ministers to put in effect the decisions of the summit. Then you have a secretariat in Arusha to implement. These ones have nothing. So what relevance are they? So until they become like any international organization which meets and talks, but is unable to put into implement what they have agreed upon. And you see, you look at it, once you do not have non-binding resolutions, whatever they are going to resolve, they are non-binding on the members. So you cannot now start saying, how shall we benefit from those resolutions when after they have agreed, country A can go back and say, ignore that. They must reform, there must be mechanism, institution, organization, in order to push this forward. That is lacking. For most of these bodies, I don't seriously see their relevance. Because for me, for a body to be relevant, it would have to be like the Security Council, a decision of the Security Council, which can enforce and implement its own, what it has come up with. But even the General Assembly, none of its resolutions are non-binding. So we are replicating bodies, instead of concentrating on the areas which require solutions. Now you look at your Africa. Here, you have East African Community, you have SADC, South African Development Corporation, you have COMESA, you have ECOWAS, you have AU. All these bodies in Africa, just as an example, when you look at their charters, they are dealing with there's almost the same challenges, the same things Africans are facing. But why do you need the East Africa, SADC, COMESA, ECOWAS? Why do you need all these? Now there is even a Great Lakes region, by the way. Why do you all this? So just like a NAM, does it even have a statute? Does it have a charter? Does it have a law which guides it? I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any. So if you don't even have a statute or a charter which guides you how you do your business, what are you really? Not a talking shop? What are you? The very first thing is to have a constitution, something which guides you. I'm not aware of any from NAM. I'm not. But an international organization must have some legal document. Maybe for you have one, I don't know, but I've never seen one. But there is seriousness. These bodies would be okay. The bodies I've talked about, East Africa, SADC, and so on, if they were building blocks towards one Africa, towards better cooperation in Africa. If they are building blocks, that will be very good. But as far as I can see, I think it is only the East African community which has got a treaty on which can lead it to be a building block. Because for it to be a building block, you must address the question of politics, which the Treaty for East Africa Community does. It says common market, monetary union, and then a political federation. In that respect, it is a building block, but the rest don't have. So to answer your question, I don't see how the multiplicity of these bodies in Africa, for example, is going to help Africa. So instead of having 120 countries here for 4 days, they talk, we clap, they go away, then after some years they will meet in another country, that country will also clap, they go away.
What you want to say that it is it all about being formality? Can we term it like that?
No. If they met and put in place systems, mechanisms, reforms, which make them relevant today, it will be a very good thing. Because like I said, many of them are South countries who have the same kind of problems. So it is an opportunity for them to reform it, to meet today's challenges. 1945 and 1947 is very far when this thing of non-aligned began. 61 when it was formalized, it's very far. We are talking about 60 years. So if you cannot have reform in 60 years, maybe you better just wind up. To have on the agenda, what I would advise to have on agenda in the next meeting, institutional reforms of NAM. The type of institutional reform which will make that body relevant to today's challenges. Because why it was formed to be non-aligned has ceased to exist. If the next organizers can have on the agenda institutional and organizational reforms, that will be good. That will be good.
What issues are those that you would like them to tackle?
Environment. Environment is critical. You can see how it is messing up farmers in Uganda. The rains come and they become too much. We have planted our maize. The maize is rotting in the gardens. The question of environmental protection is critical. It is even going to be a security issue. That is number one. Number two is are these debts African countries are getting in. We are mortgaging these countries. It's going to affect future generations. When we are over borrowing, we can't pay, and not even affect future generations. It's affecting it that we cannot now do service delivery because we are paying debts. The money, everything which is coming in, we are paying debts. So I think debt is something they can sit together and see how best, what are the best, which countries are doing well, what can we borrow from you, how can you help us to do this? Because the debt is directly related to service delivery. I think that is one area where I would think they should address. Number three, which they will not anyway, but I'll say it, is human rights. You see, there is this argument that human rights are something for white people. That for us, we need first to develop. We need to concentrate and put money in development, then human rights will follow. That African societies were more communal. You looked at the rights of the community more than the rights of an individual. The individual had to give away. So we have tended to justify our cracking down, our not supporting human rights on that one of saying that the community surpasses the individual, which is different from Europe. That's what it is argued. But human rights is what makes you become self-aware. It is what makes you exploit your thinking. It is what makes you think be outside the box. Human rights must come before development, not the other way around like our leaders think. So I would think that human rights is the one area they could address. Number 4, widespread poverty. Widespread poverty in Africa here, poverty is just too high. If they had policies, policies and implemented them which would reduce poverty, they would be very relevant. Everybody will say, that body which came to Munyonyo has done this for me. That's how you become relevant to Africa. But if you are not addressing the issues which affect the ordinary person, the ordinary person will not bother with you, will not see your relevance. How many people in Kampala even understand what NAM is about? They just see roads being swept, this and that. They don't even understand what is that. So lastly, would be for them really to address socio-economic issues. Those countries which are making progress, those countries in Africa which are making progress, is there inequality? Because it is useless for you to say the country has developed when only 2% of the population is doing well. Okay? So socio-economic issues really ought to be addressed. I think those are 5 I would say. If they got this, they will be relevant to their country. You see, in terms of relevance as Ugandans, we must be able to see what is good for us here. Because remember that the taxpayer put in, was it 86 billion in the construction of that center. We put in 86 billion. So if we as Ugandans are going to put 86 billion in this thing, we must expect that it will bring us more than 86 billion. Are there in the future, as a longer term, will this huge complex will have be able to bring the benefits for us? Because of course one meeting can't. But if we look at it longer term, will it be able to bring back benefits for us? Or have we sunk our 86 billion in nothing? Because as a poor country, we should take on international conferences carefully. Should build things which we know that they will keep on attracting more and more conferences, huge conferences. Then we may benefit. But if this one is going to be closed, is going to be there for 1 year without anybody wanting to use it, I see our 86 billion is going for down the drain. Yeah.